My father told two CEO guests that I wouldn't be attending his annual gala because this gathering is for VIPs only. He said I wouldn't fit the tone of the evening. He didn't know I was standing behind him close enough to hear every word. One of the CEOs saw my name on the tablet at check-in and frowned. The other tried to connect my face with my father's explanation, confused. That moment lasted only a few seconds, but it set the tone for the rest of the night. Hours later, after those men realized who had signed their company's international cultural agreements, the royal guest called my name into the microphone. My name is Ava Hale, 32 years old, youngest in the Hale family, and the easiest to dismiss. I lived in Washington, D.C., but I had grown up in Newport, Rhode Island, where my parents hosted one large winter fundraising gala each year. It was technically a cultural heritage event, but most years it served as a networking opportunity for my older brother Preston and for my father's investment firm. They invited executives, donors, and anyone with enough status to help them build what they like to call elite connections. 3 weeks before the gala, an envelope arrived at my apartment. Heavy paper embossed crest my parents' names in gold. Inside was the formal invitation and a short note in my father's handwriting. Ava, keep it simple this year. Don't draw attention. This night is important for Preston. Dad. There was no greeting, no question about my schedule, no sign he cared whether I came or not. I put the card on my desk next to a briefing packet for a cultural cooperation agreement I had spent months negotiating. My work involved cultural diplomacy, heritage protection, and coordination with European and Middle Eastern partners. My parents never asked about any of it. They told people I did admin for a nonprofit. I flew into Rhode Island on the afternoon of the gala. The Newport waterfront was cold, the sky pale and clear. The hotel hosting the event was large, expensive, and decorated with winter greenery. Staff members carried crates, checked lighting, and tested microphones. A small line formed near the registration table. Guests, dressed in dark suits and sequined gowns, waited to sign in. I wore a navy silk dress with a modest neckline, simple earrings, and a low twist in my hair. Nothing flashy, nothing that would start a conversation. That was the safest choice with my family. At the check-in table, a woman with a headset asked for my name. Ava Hale. She typed quickly, then paused. Ava Hale. Yes. She looked at the screen again, then back at me. I was told you weren't attending. I am. Her expression tightened. There's no problem. One moment. She reached into a box for my place card and checked the table number. The hesitation was obvious. You'll be at table 11. Okay. Behind her, the ballroom doors were closed, but I could hear music and people moving around inside. She lowered her voice slightly. Would you mind waiting here? Your father asked us to confirm when you arrived. Before I could answer, the lobby doors revolved, and my father and Preston stepped inside. Both wore tailored suits and the same public-facing smile. Preston held his coat over one arm, already greeting a couple from Boston with an easy handshake. My father noticed me a moment later. His smile thinned. Ava, you're here. I replied to the invitation, requesting a response by confirming that I would attend. He turned to the registration worker. Everything's settled with the seating. Yes, sir. Ms. Hale is at table 11. Good. He cleared his throat. We needed the VIP table for the CEO guests and the royal delegation. Preston will be up there for most of the night. He said it loudly with the casual tone of someone explaining seating logistics to a staff assistant, not his own daughter. One of the CEOs nearby glanced at me with a brief, puzzled look. The man asked my father, Your other daughter? Yes, my father said. Ava. She doesn't work in business, so we've placed her with the standard guests. Tonight is about corporate partners. He used the word standard like it meant unimportant. Of course, the CEO said politely. I didn't respond. I accepted my place card, thanked the registration worker, and walked toward the ballroom. Inside, the chandeliers were bright. Round tables covered in white linen filled the room. Table 1 in the center was the VIP table. I recognized the name cards my parents' Preston donors, business partners, and 2 cards marked CEO Guest. Another card simply read, Royal Guest. Table 11 was positioned near the side exit that led to the service hallway. That table faced away from the stage. Servers carrying trays passed in and out of the door behind it. I took my seat. A man in a blazer nodded at me. "Evening," he said. "I'm Hank. My wife's getting a drink." "Nice to meet you," I said. "Are you part of the staff or family?" He raised his eyebrows. "Thought the Hales were all up front." "Not all," I said. He laughed politely and looked down at his program. Out in the center of the room, my mother glided around in a silver dress, greeting guests and pointing them toward the bar. She leaned in close to people when she talked, as if whispering important information. I heard Preston's name repeated more than once. I had heard the same pattern for years, investors impressed with him, new projects he was leading, achievements he had stacked up. None of those details had anything to do with cultural heritage. But this event had never actually been about cultural heritage. A staff coordinator approached me quietly. "Ms. Hale, I'm sorry to interrupt. What's wrong?" She held her clipboard close. "We received a message from the royal delegation. They asked us to confirm that you're here." "Yes," I said. "Why?" "They also asked why you're seated in the back." I kept my expression neutral. "I'm seated where my card placed me." She nodded slowly. "They expected you near the front." "Is there anything I should do?" I asked. "No. We've informed them you're present. They'll find you when they arrive." She left looking uneasy. Out on the main floor, Preston stood talking with a European board member from a logistics firm. I recognized the man from my own work. His company had a cultural compliance requirement attached to a new project, and I had signed off on the last stage of it. He didn't see me now. If he had, he might have recognized me. Or maybe he wouldn't have. I had stopped assuming people would remember names from international documents. My father addressed the small group around him. "Preston is ready for larger partnerships," he said. "This evening is significant for him. He understands how to work with global markets." No mention of me, no acknowledgement I worked with global partners every week. The Master of Ceremonies stepped onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hale Foundation Winter Gala. We appreciate your presence and your support. Tonight we highlight our community partnerships and prepare for a brief appearance by our special royal guest involved in global heritage initiatives." Applause filled the room. At table 11, a woman leaned toward her husband. "Can you believe they brought in a royal guest? The Hales really know how to gather elite guests." Her husband nodded without looking up from his phone. I checked mine. A message waited. "Landing in 5. Her Highness asked about you specifically." "R." I typed a short answer. "Understood. I'm in the ballroom." Another message arrived immediately. "We'll approach your table once we enter." The ballroom noise grew louder as more guests arrived. I slipped the phone back into my clutch. From across the room, my father looked toward table 11. Our eyes met briefly. He turned away and continued talking to donors. That was when I realized the evening would not unfold the way my parents expected. My earliest memories of family gatherings were of being asked to stay out of the way. Birthdays, holiday dinners, school ceremonies in Rhode Island. My parents always made space for Preston's achievements, Lauren's charm, and whatever story my father wanted to tell about our family's supposed status. My place was usually the corner seat, the kids' table, or a last-minute chair pulled from the hallway. As I got older, the pattern never changed. It simply became quieter, more practiced. When I was 12, Preston won a statewide debate competition. My parents threw a dinner for 20 guests. I had my own accomplishment that week, a small award for a community heritage project. My teacher said I had a good mind for history and organization. I tried to share it at dinner. My father talked over me and continued explaining Preston's scoring. My mother told me later that my award was sweet, but not something people would understand. When I was 15, Lauren performed in a school play. My parents bought flowers, made signs, and invited extended family. I had moderated a cultural youth presentation earlier that same weekend. I mentioned it once. My father asked me if I had finished setting the table. Those moments accumulated. Small, consistent, easy to dismiss if you were not the one being ignored. By the time I left for college, I learned not to bring up anything related to my work. My family filtered every subject through one question. Does it make Preston look more successful? If it did not, it was not discussed. After graduating, I took a position with a cultural heritage organization. The job later connected me with the United Nations. My father assumed it was a short-term internship. He once told someone at a dinner party that I worked somewhere in admin. I corrected him. He shrugged. When I moved to Washington, D.C., I called home every few weeks. The conversations followed the same script. Preston's promotions, Lauren's work trips, my parents' charity committees. When I talked about my projects, they changed the subject. After a while, I stopped trying. They were more comfortable believing I was the child with the least impact. 3 years ago, I brought a partner home for Thanksgiving. He worked in public policy. My father talked to him for nearly an hour about consultants, investments, and real careers. He never asked me a single question. My partner noticed. After the trip, he told me he had never seen a family erase one of their own so smoothly. We broke up months later for reasons unrelated to my family, but I still remembered the look on his face during that weekend. By the time the annual gala rolled around this year, I knew what to expect. I would show up, sit where they put me, avoid conversation, and leave early. I never made a scene. I never pushed back. That was how the family dynamic survived. 3 days before the event, my brother sent a group message to remind us of the schedule. My mother had added several attachments: floor plans, menu notes, parking instructions. She highlighted Preston's role in welcoming the CEO guests. There was no mention of me. I replied only with received. Lauren texted privately a few minutes later. Just do not wear anything too attention-grabbing. You know how Dad is about these things. I asked, what things? She responded. He just wants the night to run smoothly. Preston has worked hard for this. I did not argue. There was no point. My flight to Rhode Island was uneventful. I worked on a briefing for a cultural program involving the royal delegation scheduled to attend the event. I had signed the cooperation agreement with them 2 months earlier. Their representative, Rami, was efficient, polite, and detail-oriented. My family had never heard his name and showed no interest when I mentioned the partnership during a call. They changed the subject to Preston's presentation for his firm. Landing at the airport, I received a text from my father. You can take an Uber. We are busy with rehearsal. There was no complaint. It was expected. At the hotel, I checked in quietly and walked through the nearly empty ballroom hours before the event. Staff tested lights and made notes on clipboards. The coordinator in charge recognized my name from the event schedule. You are with the Hale family, she asked. Yes. She hesitated. Your father asked us to confirm some seating arrangements. There was a change this morning. I waited. You were originally listed for table 7. Then he moved you to table 11 and told us not to adjust the VIP table under any circumstances. I nodded once. Thank you for letting me know. I did not feel angry. I felt something steadier, almost fixed. It was the same pattern repeated one more time. Back in my room, I showered, dressed, and laid out my documents in case the royal delegation needed anything during the evening. I kept my makeup simple. I wore low heels because I knew I would be on my feet more than my parents assumed. At 5:45, I went downstairs. The lobby was full of arrivals, executives, donors, local political figures. My father and Preston were already greeting people. They carried themselves with the confidence of men who believed they were leading the evening. My mother wore a silver dress, her posture perfect. She smiled brightly at every person except me. With me, her smile tightened a degree. You made it, she said. I did. Stay near the back until the reception starts. We have a lot of VIP movement up front. I am aware. She exhaled as if relieved that I agreed. There was nothing to disagree with. She walked away to greet a couple in formal wear. I found a quiet corner near the check-in area. Guests passed by me without noticing. A few glanced at me, probably assuming I was part of the staff or someone's +1. That happened often when I attended events with my family. While waiting for the ballroom doors to open, I overheard 2 donors speaking behind me. Preston is the one to watch, the woman said. The parents seem proud. Does the sister do anything I think she does nonprofit work? Good for her. Not unkind, not malicious, simply uninformed, the way most people were about me. I checked my phone. A message came in from Rami. We land soon. Her Highness asked if the seating was correct. She prefers to see you early in the night. I typed, I was seated near the back. His reply came fast. That seems incorrect, I added. That is where they assigned me. He wrote, understood. We will find you. I put my phone away. The ballroom doors opened. Guests began entering. My table was near the service hallway. I sat, folded my napkin, and prepared for another predictable evening. I did not expect the events that would unfold over the next 2 hours. The royal delegation would change the trajectory of the night. My family would see a part of my life they had refused to acknowledge. The CEOs would realize the contracts they signed had gone through my office. And the moment that started quietly with my father saying I was not elite enough for the VIP table would turn into something he could not control. The night had only started. I walked into the ballroom before most guests had taken their seats, hoping to blend into the movement of staff and early arrivals. The chandeliers were bright enough to reflect off the polished floor, and the music from the string quartet carried across the room without drawing attention. I stayed along the edge, close to a line of caterers preparing drink trays. No one stopped me or asked who I was. They assumed I belonged where I stood, somewhere in the background. My father passed by with 2 executives from a New York energy group. He gestured around the room like a host giving a tour of a property he built himself. When his eyes scanned toward me, he did not pause or ask why I was standing alone. He continued walking, laughing smooth and steady, the perfect sound for people who wanted to believe he controlled every detail of the evening. Preston joined him moments later. He looked confident, hair perfectly styled, suit tailored. I heard one of the executives say, "You will go far in international business. You look like you belong there." Preston smiled and thanked him. I had heard those words my entire life, and not one of them had ever been directed at me. I stepped closer to my assigned table. Table 11 was filling quickly with people who seemed comfortable being placed far from the center. A school administrator, a nonprofit accountant, a retired couple from Providence. Ordinary guests, kind people my parents respected in surface-level conversations, but never considered part of the inner circle. A woman in her 60s sat next to me. She adjusted her glasses and smiled. "Are you here with someone?" she asked. "I am part of the Hale family," I said. Her eyebrows lifted. "Really? I thought the family was at the front. Most of them are." She hesitated. "Are you sure you are not staff?" The question was not offensive. It was familiar, expected. My family projected an image that had no space for me, and strangers picked up on it instantly. "I am not staff," I said calmly. "I work in cultural diplomacy." "Oh," the woman said, nodding politely. "That sounds interesting." The conversation ended there. Her tone said enough she did not understand what that meant, and she assumed it was lower in status than consulting or corporate fundraising. My family encouraged that misunderstanding for years, so it never surprised me. Across the room, 2 women from a Boston law firm passed by table 11. I caught a fragment of their conversation. "That is the younger Hale, right?" "Yes," the other said. "She does volunteer work or something. I heard she is sweet, shy maybe. Not a VIP, though." They walked on before I reacted. They did not mean harm. They were repeating what they had been told. A staff runner appeared at our table holding a small radio. She whispered to another coordinator and pointed discreetly in my direction. They looked over, unsure, then checked the seating chart again. Their uncertainty said something had already gone off script. I pretended not to notice. At the front tables, my parents stood with the CEO guests. One of the men, tall and gray-haired, scanned the room with thoughtful attention. When he reached table 11, his eyes rested on me for a second too long. He squinted slightly as if searching his memory. I recognized the expression. It was the look of someone who had seen my name on a document, someone who had signed a contract I reviewed, someone who had no idea the person they worked with professionally was the same person sitting at the farthest table from the stage. He whispered something to my father. My father laughed lightly as if dismissing whatever question had been asked. The CEO did not laugh. He glanced toward me again. I looked away. Lauren arrived a few minutes later wearing a sequined dress that matched the theme of the night. She approached table 1, hugged Preston, air-kissed my mother, and found her seat. Then she noticed me across the room. She waved politely, small and stiff, the wave someone gives a distant acquaintance. She mouthed, "You are early," as if that explained why I was sitting in the back. I nodded. There was no point in addressing it. The staff dimmed the lights slightly to signal the beginning of the program. Guests took their seats. My father stepped onto the stage for the welcome address. He adjusted the microphone, smiled, and spoke with the confidence of a man who believed every eye in the room belonged to him. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he said. "We are honored to host such distinguished partners and leaders." He highlighted Preston's consulting work. He acknowledged the CEO guests by name. He mentioned the royal delegation arriving soon. Then he added, "Our family is grateful to see so many important community members with us tonight." Not once did he mention all his children. Not once did he acknowledge I was present. When the applause subsided, servers began walking through with champagne. One paused near our table. He leaned down slightly. "Ms. Hale," he asked quietly. "Yes, I was told to let you know the royal delegation has landed." My heart tightened for a moment. They were early. "Thank you," I said. The server nodded and continued down the aisle. The woman beside me raised an eyebrow. "You know them. I work with them." I answered simply. The retired man across from us asked, "In what way international cooperation agreements?" I said. "Cultural heritage work, security protocols, public programs." The man nodded, but looked unsure how to respond. My answers rarely fit into the conversational categories people used at events like this. A commotion near the ballroom entrance pulled everyone's attention. The hotel doors opened. A security officer stepped in first, followed by 2 aides wearing formal attire. Then the royal guest entered, a poised woman in a dark evening dress, familiar to anyone who followed global cultural initiatives. My father straightened in his chair. Preston's expression shifted from confidence to excitement. Guests at table 1 rose immediately. My table did not. The royal guest scanned the room. Her gaze passed the first tables without slowing. She looked toward the back, directly at me. She began walking in my direction. Several heads turned. The law firm women paused mid-conversation. The CEO, who had been glancing at me, stood slightly confused. My father rose quickly from the VIP table. "Your Highness," he called out, starting toward her. "Welcome. We are honored." She did not stop for him. She kept walking, heels steady on the polished floor. Her aides followed, parting the crowd without effort. She approached table 11 and stopped in front of me. "Ava," she said, her voice calm and warm, "we were looking for you." A rush of conversation erupted around the room. None of it reached me clearly. Table 11 stared in stunned silence. Table 1 froze mid-motion. I stood and extended my hand. "Your Highness, welcome to Newport." She smiled. "We expected to see you near the front." "My family arranged the seating," I said carefully. Her eyes flickered with recognition. She understood without needing it explained. Behind us, my father reached the table, breath unsteady. "Your Highness," he said, "if you like, I can escort you to the VIP table. We have reserved seats for you." She looked at him for a moment. "Thank you. I will sit with Ava first." Her tone was not rude. It was simply definitive. She turned back to me. "May we speak before the program begins?" "Of course." I stepped away with her past rows of tables filled with quiet watching guests. People who had never noticed me were suddenly trying to place my name, my face, my role. In those few steps, the atmosphere of the evening shifted. The entire room understood something my family had ignored for years. I was not invisible, and the night was only beginning. The moment the royal guest stopped at table 11, every conversation in the ballroom thinned into scattered fragments. People whispered without attempting to hide it, forks still. A few guests shifted in their chairs to get a better view, pretending they were simply adjusting for comfort. I walked beside Her Highness toward a quieter corner near the west doors. Her aides followed at a respectful distance. My pulse was steady, but the hard gaze from table 1 pressed against the back of my neck. Her Highness spoke first. "Your briefing last week was precise. My advisors remarked on your clarity. I am glad it was helpful." "It was more than helpful," she said. "Your work is the reason tonight's delegation moved forward with the agreement. They trust you." I nodded once. "Thank you." Her tone lowered. "But I must ask something more direct. Why were you seated at the back of the room?" I chose my words carefully. It was not my decision. She studied my face. She was experienced enough to read what I did not say. Behind us, 2 members of the catering team pushed a cart of glasses through a side door. A few guests stared openly, trying to understand why the royal guest was talking to someone they barely noticed when they entered. Her Highness folded her hands lightly. We observed the seating chart this morning. You were listed near the front. My father made a last-minute change. She paused. Do they know what you do? They know, I said. They do not believe it. She gave a short nod. Then they will learn tonight. Before I could answer, I heard my name said sharply across the room. Ava. My brother Preston approached fast, jaw-tight smile forced. He looked as if he had run calculations in his head and did not like the results. Your Highness, he said only after he finished addressing me. We had seats prepared for you at the VIP table. My father was about to welcome you. Her Highness replied calmly. I wanted to speak with Ava first. Preston's smile flickered. Of course, but the photographers are already preparing near the stage. Her Highness did not move. Ava and I will join you shortly. He hesitated, then attempted a softer tone. Ava, Dad is asking for you. He said there is confusion about where you went. There is no confusion, I said. I am here. Preston's eyes tightened. You know what I mean. Her Highness's aide stepped forward slightly enough to signal he had heard the tone. Preston immediately stepped back. I will let Dad know, he said stiffly, then walked away. Her Highness looked at me. Is this common? I am used to it? That does not make it acceptable. I did not answer. The room fell into a new rhythm. Conversations restarted, but with sharper glances. Guests tried to guess who I was. My father kept looking over his expression, shifting between irritation and worry. My mother clasped her hands so tightly that her knuckles whitened. Lauren whispered something to a couple near her, and they both turned to look at me with polite confusion. Her Highness guided the conversation back to work. The cooperation schedule for spring needs adjustment. We can discuss that next week. Yes, I said. I will prepare an updated outline. She smiled. You always do. For a moment, the tension loosened. Speaking with someone who actually understood my work felt like stepping into a different climate, clear, steady, familiar. Then a server passed close by, and I heard someone behind us whisper, Why is she talking to the princess? I pretended not to hear it. Her Highness did not. She straightened slightly. I assumed your family would be proud. You have accomplished more than many in your field. My family values different things. Status. Status they understand. She nodded again, quieter this time. Then we will make it easier for them to understand. A staff coordinator approached timidly. Your Highness, the stage team is ready whenever you are. I will go shortly, she said. Then she turned to me. Walk with me. I followed her up the aisle. Guests stared. Some whispered. Others watched with raised brows, trying to match my face to the headlines they suddenly suspected they had missed. My father stepped forward. Your Highness, he said with a warm, practiced voice, if you would allow me to escort you. We arranged a special introduction. She answered without hesitation. Ava will escort me. My father still went. The confidence drained from his expression, replaced by something tighter confusion, mixed with embarrassment. He looked at me. Ava, this is not the arrangement. It is the arrangement now, Her Highness said. My father swallowed hard. Of course, he said. As you wish. Cameras around the stage clicked softly. Photographers adjusted their angles. Her Highness walked to the center with me slightly behind her. The hosts took their positions. Preston moved to the far left, trying to compose himself. The MC announced her arrival. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Her Highness. Applause swept the room. She stepped forward. I moved to one side, prepared to let the event continue without interruption. But before she began her remarks, she gestured slightly toward me. I would like to acknowledge someone essential to tonight's cooperation efforts. A wave of stillness spread through the room. Ava Hale, she said, the liaison whose work made this partnership possible. Gasps. A few heads turned sharply. My mother's face went pale. My father's jaw clenched. Preston's posture stiffened. Her Highness continued. Her clarity and commitment shaped every stage of our agreement. We are grateful for her expertise. She nodded in my direction. The applause began slowly, then grew as people realized they were expected to participate. Some clapped because it was polite. Others clapped because they understood the significance. A few, including the tall CEO, clapped with genuine surprise. My father did not clap. My mother raised her hands, halfway stopped, then forced herself to join in. When the applause ended, Her Highness began her main speech. It was focused on cultural preservation and international cooperation. I listened from the side, steady and silent, aware that dozens of eyes still watched me. After her speech, the MC directed guests toward the first course. The room shifted into a softer mode, servers moving, conversations starting again, glasses clinking. I returned to table 11. The school administrator leaned toward me. "You did not mention that you worked with the royal family." "It was not relevant earlier," I said. The retired couple smiled awkwardly, as if unsure what to say to someone they had underestimated 20 minutes ago. Across the room, my father spoke quickly to Preston, who looked visibly frustrated. Lauren pretended to check her phone but kept glancing in my direction. The tall CEO from earlier approached table 11. He stood beside my chair. "Ms. Hale," he said, voice low to keep the conversation private. "May I ask, are you the one who reviewed our cultural compliance documentation last quarter?" "Yes." He let out a breath. "I thought your name looked familiar. It was part of the cooperation agreement." "You handled it well," he said. "Very well. Thank you." He nodded once, then returned to his table, leaving several guests at mine, staring at me with a mix of curiosity and embarrassment. Dinner service began. My father stayed silent, but his shoulders were tense. Preston checked his phone repeatedly. My mother whispered rapidly to a donor couple, likely attempting to frame the situation in a way that protected her version of events. Then near the stage, the microphone hummed again. The MC said, "Before we continue, Her Highness has requested a brief acknowledgement." The princess stepped forward and looked directly at my table. "Ava," she said clearly, "please join us on stage." A collective reaction rippled across the room. Surprise, disbelief, curiosity. I stood. My father did too, but out of shock, not politeness. The night was shifting faster than any of them could control, and for the first time in my life, I was no longer the one expected to shrink. I walked toward the stage while every sound in the ballroom tightened into a single muted hum. Conversations dimmed. Forks stopped in midair. Guests leaned slightly forward, pretending to adjust their seats, but clearly following each step I took. I kept my posture even and my expression neutral. My father watched with the same expression he used whenever something escaped his control. Jaw-tight eyes, sharp, shoulders rigid. Her Highness waited at the center of the stage. When I reached her side, she gave me a polite nod before turning back to the microphone. "For those who do not already know," she said, "Ava Hale has been a central figure in the coordination of our cultural agreement. Her clarity and professionalism have guided every stage of this partnership." The room reacted again, some surprised, some impressed, some uncomfortable. I stood still, hands folded loosely in front of me. I was not shaking, not angry, only alert. Her Highness continued, "She is someone whose work deserves recognition tonight." I heard a cluster of whispers near table 1. Someone said, "But her father said she just does nonprofit paperwork." Someone else said, "How did they not know?" My father stepped forward slightly, but did not interrupt. He kept his hands at his sides, gripping the edge of his place card hard enough to bend it. Her Highness turned toward me. "Ava, thank you." "You are welcome," I said clearly. She gave a final nod to the crowd. "We will continue with the program. Please enjoy the evening." Applause rose, uneven but sincere, then stretched into a more unified rhythm. When it settled, she stepped aside, and her aides gently guided her toward the hallway for a scheduled meeting. I followed until she stopped near the doors. "Ava," she said quietly, "you handled that well. I appreciate that. Expect conversations later. Many will try to correct their behavior. I assume so. They will not know how to navigate the shift. That is not your responsibility." "I understand." Her Highness touched my arm lightly. "Enjoy the evening on your terms." She left with her security detail disappearing into the back corridor. I exhaled once steady and controlled, then turned to walk back toward the ballroom. But before I reached the aisle, Preston stepped directly into my path. "What was that?" he asked, voice low and sharp. "Acknowledgement," I said. "You know that is not what I mean. Then ask a direct question." He scanned the room, frustrated. You embarrassed Dad. I did not say anything. She did. You should have stopped her. That is not how diplomatic protocol works. Preston rubbed his forehead. You could have at least warned us that you worked with her. You never asked. He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again when he realized I was right. Before he could regroup, our mother hurried over face tense. Ava, she said through a strained smile, your father needs to speak with you. Now. After dinner, I replied calmly, this is not optional. It is tonight. She blinked at the flatness of my tone. She had spent years speaking to me as though I would always comply, always adjust, always stay quiet. She had no experience navigating a version of me who did not fold at the first sign of pressure. Ava, please, she said softer now, but still urgent. There are important guests at this table. We cannot have misunderstandings. There was no misunderstanding. Your father is upset, she whispered. He feels blindsided. That is not my responsibility. Her expression shifted, wounded and indignant. We are your family. I have not forgotten that. She stepped back speechless and glanced helplessly toward table 1. My father stood waiting, arms crossed. He expected me to hurry to him, as I always did when he summoned me. I did not. Instead, I walked back toward table 11. When I sat down, the woman beside me cleared her throat. We did not realize, she began. You were not supposed to, I said. She nodded awkwardly and returned her attention to her soup. The atmosphere at table 11 changed. Respectful, cautious, quiet. No one asked further questions. No one made assumptions. No one tried to hide that they were rethinking everything they had said earlier. Across the room, guests approached my father. Their expressions were polite, but the tone of their posture had changed. They were no longer looking at him for cues. They were looking at him for explanations. A man I recognized from an international firm leaned toward him and said something that made my father's throat tighten. I could not hear the exact words, but the message was clear. People who believed Preston was the center of the Hale family's international reach now understood there was someone else, someone they had ignored, dismissed, or overlooked. I watched my father try to salvage the shift. He smiled for too long at each comment. He laughed at statements that were not jokes. He straightened his tie repeatedly, a sign he was uncomfortable. He kept glancing at me, searching for something, control maybe. Familiarity. The version of me he could still manage. He did not find it. The first course ended. Servers cleared plates. Conversations resumed at moderate volume, but the undertone had changed. Not loud, not dramatic, but unmistakable. People were recalculating their perception of the Hale family. A donor from Boston approached me cautiously. Ms. Hale, he said, I had no idea you were connected to the royal delegation. I work with them. That is impressive. Thank you. He hesitated. If you are open to it, I would like to discuss a cultural project my company is developing. I can connect you with our office. He nodded with genuine respect. I would appreciate that. When he walked away, I noticed Preston watching, uneasy and restless. He had built his public identity on being the accomplished sibling. Tonight challenged that. He shifted in his chair, restless fingers tapping. My mother leaned toward him, whispering. Preston shook his head. She whispered again. He pushed his hair back in irritation, then forced himself to sit straighter. The tall CEO from earlier approached them. He gestured toward me while speaking to my father. My father's shoulders stiffened. The CEO continued speaking, calm but firm, then walked away. I watched my father's face harden. Moments later, he made his way toward me. He reached my table and spoke in a low, controlled voice. Ava, he said, I need a word. I lifted my glass. I am eating. This is serious. It usually is. This is not the time for attitude. I set down my glass, then chose a different tone. My father inhaled sharply. You created a spectacle. I stood on a stage. You let the princess speak that way. I followed protocol. Your actions made me look foolish. I did nothing except exist. His jaw tightened. Do not get clever. I kept my voice even. You moved my seat to the back of the room for the same old reasons. She corrected the narrative. That is all. He leaned closer. You think this makes you important? No, I said. My work already made me important. Tonight only made it visible. He stood still, breathing hard. Then he stepped back, straightened his jacket, and returned to the VIP table. For the first time in my life, I felt the shift clearly and without doubt. I was done standing where they placed me, and everyone in the room knew it. Dinner service continued, but the atmosphere in the ballroom no longer resembled the polished, controlled event my parents had planned. Servers moved carefully between tables, sensing tension they could not name. Guests who had spent the first hour showcasing confidence now spoke in quieter tones, leaning closer to one another. I kept my posture steady and focused on my plate, cutting small bites without rushing. The table around me stayed polite, but tense. No one quite knew how to speak to me yet, not after witnessing the exchange on stage. Conversations grew cautious the way people speak when they have just realized they misjudged someone sitting 3 feet away. The retired man across from me broke the silence first. "Your work must be demanding," he said carefully. "It is structured," I answered. "Well," he said, adjusting his glasses. "You seem to handle it well. Thank you." He nodded and returned to his meal, relieved to have said something safe. Another woman at the table cleared her throat. "We were not aware of your position." "There was no reason you would be," I replied. She gave a small, embarrassed smile. "Still, it is impressive." I did not respond. Polite comments were fine, but they were directed at the version of me they had just learned existed, not the version they had ignored for an hour or a lifetime. A server approached quietly. "Ms. Hale, the hotel manager, asked me to check if you need anything." "No, thank you." He nodded and moved on. A few people at my table pretended they had not noticed the added attention. Near the front, Preston tried to resume his usual rhythm with the CEO guests, but his face strained around the edges. He gestured too widely, spoke too fast, and laughed at irregular intervals, small signs of someone losing control of the narrative he had spent his adulthood building. My mother clung to her seat, whispering to donors in a frantic attempt to redirect the conversation back to safe topics. Her hands moved fast, folding and unfolding her napkin, something she did only when anxious. My father sat stiffly, arms crossed, scanning the room like someone searching for a way to reverse a public mistake. He did not eat, he did not speak, he did not smile. The quiet around table 11 deepened. I let it sit. Sometimes silence carries more weight than explanation. A soft buzz from my phone broke my focus. A message from Rami. "The delegation is satisfied. Good work. We stay nearby if needed." I typed a simple reply, "Understood." The tall CEO, Daniel Morgan, stood and approached my table again. He had the confidence of someone used to being listened to, but tonight he moved with deliberate caution. "Ms. Hale," he said, "may I speak with you briefly?" "Yes." We stepped several feet away enough to give privacy, but not attract unnecessary attention. "I reviewed the cultural documentation you signed earlier in the year," he said. "The clarity was exceptional. I wanted to say that directly. I appreciate that. Your father mentioned nothing." "I know." He exhaled. "That must be difficult. It is consistent." He studied me for a moment, then spoke with a lowered voice. "If you ever consider shifting sectors, my firm would welcome a conversation. I am committed to my current role." "Understood. Offer stands." He extended his hand. I shook it. His respect was genuine. He returned to his table without looking toward my father. When I sat back down, the retired woman at my table whispered, "Did he just offer you something?" He offered a conversation. She blinked, impressed but unsure how to respond. Throughout the next 30 minutes, I kept still and paid attention, watching, not engaging. That quiet observation had saved me in diplomatic negotiations more times than my family realized. I read shifts in posture, changes in tone, eyes that flickered with calculation. The second course ended and the ballroom staff prepared for the short intermission. Guests rose to stretch and refill drinks. I remained at the table, giving myself a moment of stillness. That was when a soft voice came from behind me. "Ms. Hale." I looked over my shoulder. It was the event manager. "Yes." He glanced toward the VIP table as though making sure no one followed him. "I wanted to apologize," he said quietly. "Your original seat was table 3. We moved you because your father insisted." "I know. We should have questioned the change." "You followed instructions," I said. "It is not your fault." He nodded gratefully. "If you prefer to move now, I can arrange." "No," I said. "I will remain here." He hesitated. "Your family might react. They already have." That seemed to settle it. The manager stepped away, visibly conflicted but relieved. Preston approached again, posture rigid. "Ava." "Can we talk outside?" he asked. "No." His jaw tightened. "This is serious. Dad is furious. Dad is often furious. This time it matters." "To him." He lowered his voice. "To all of us. People are asking questions. That is not my concern. It should be." "Why?" "Because he said, struggling for words, we are family." I did not speak. He shifted uncomfortably. "Ava, he said you could have told us what you do. You could have prepared us. You never asked. That is not fair. It is accurate." He looked away. "Dad is right. You have a tone tonight. I have clarity tonight." Preston opened his mouth to argue again, but stopped when the tall CEO waved him over. Preston forced a smile and walked away quickly, desperate to regain normal footing. The woman beside me leaned in. "Your brother seems unsettled. He is adjusting." She nodded slowly, unsure how to respond. The lights dimmed, slightly signal for guests to return to their seats. Conversations softened. The MC walked to the microphone. "We will continue shortly. Please take your seats." Across the room, my father placed his hands on the table, bracing himself. He looked older than usual. Not weaker, just exposed. My mother murmured something to him. He did not respond. Preston returned posture straighter, as if he had forced steadiness back into his body, but his eyes moved restlessly toward me. The ballroom quieted. I folded my napkin, rested my hands in my lap, and sat with the same calm I carried in negotiation rooms. I was not here to reclaim anything. I was here because I had stopped leaving when they told me I did not belong. And for the first time, that silence was no longer a retreat. It was a boundary. The ballroom shifted when the MC stepped back from the microphone, and the lights rose slightly. A few murmurs drifted across the room, but most guests settled quickly. The program listed a short acknowledgement segment before the final course, something my parents had been thrilled about when the event was still progressing according to their expectations. Now neither of them looked eager for attention. The royal guest, Princess Amara of Lithoria, stood near the edge of the stage, speaking quietly with one of her aides. Her posture remained composed, but her eyes swept the room with awareness. She had been watching more than my family realized. I kept my gaze on the table, listening. The MC re-entered the stage. "Before we continue, Princess Amara has requested a brief moment to say a few words." The room shifted immediately. Chairs straightened. Conversations ended. Even the servers paused. My father sat up, smoothing the front of his jacket. My mother tugged at her bracelet. Preston fixed his tie, trying to look calm. Princess Amara stepped forward, carrying no notes. Her voice carried clearly, steady, and controlled. "Thank you for your hospitality," she began. "This evening has provided valuable insight into the business community here, and I appreciate the opportunity to meet so many people who influence the region's direction." Several guests smiled, proud to be acknowledged. She continued, "Before dessert is served, I would like to extend recognition to an individual whose recent work directly supported a successful agreement between Lithoria and several United States agencies." My father's shoulders lifted. Preston leaned forward. My mother pressed her hands together tightly. Princess Amara looked across the room. Her gaze passed over the VIP table entirely and landed on table 11. "Ava Hale," she said, "would you please join me on stage?" The room shifted again sharply this time. Heads snapped toward table 11. Conversations died instantly. The silence felt absolute. I stood without rushing. My pace remained even as I walked toward the stage. I did not glance toward my family. Their confusion pressed across the room like heat from a furnace, but I did not acknowledge it. Princess Amara waited with a slight nod. When I reached her, she took my hand briefly in greeting. "It is good to see you," she said quietly, in a tone that suggested familiarity rather than formality. "You as well." She turned to the microphone. Ms. Hale served as lead strategist on the Cultural Sustainability Accord finalized last quarter. Her guidance prevented an escalation during negotiations and preserved the collaborative structure we rely on moving forward. A few gasps broke out. Some attendees whispered, My father's face tightened so sharply that the line of his jaw looked carved from stone. Princess Amara continued. She reviewed drafts, corrected critical framework conflicts, and ensured the agreement reflected balanced respect. Her work was not publicized, but it mattered. Applause began near the diplomatic section of the room and spread outward. Not everyone joined, but enough did to fill the ballroom with clear approval. I nodded once. "Thank you." Princess Amara lowered her voice slightly so only I could hear. "Your composure reflects well tonight. I am maintaining consistency." "That is noted." She addressed the room again. "I hope the United States continues to develop talent of this standard. People like Ms. Hale do not appear often." She stepped aside. "Thank you." I returned to my seat as the applause faded. People moved out of the way with more respect than before. When I sat down, the table remained quiet, but the silence carried a different quality, caution mixed with recognition. Across the room, my father finally spoke for the first time since the program began. "What is happening?" he asked sharply, directing the question to no one in particular. My mother whispered something to him, but he shook his head. Preston stared at me, bewildered. The third course arrived, but hardly anyone touched the food. Attention still shifted toward me at brief intervals. Some guests whispered. Some avoided eye contact entirely. A few tried to place my face in contexts they had previously ignored. I focused on my plate, eating small, steady bites. My posture did not change. The tall CEO approached again. "Congratulations," he said. "Thank you. It is unusual to see recognition at this level given so precisely. It reflects the work." He nodded. "Indeed." He returned to his table without extra commentary. His tone had changed. Cleaner. More direct. My father stood abruptly. The movement forced attention toward him. He crossed the room quickly and stopped at the edge of my table. "Ava," he said in a voice too controlled to be natural a word. "No." His expression tightened. "This is not optional." "It is." He leaned closer. "I am unable to answer questions. People are asking about your involvement. That is outside my responsibility. My position is being undermined." "You could have told me. You could have listened." "That is not the same. It is exactly the same." He pressed his palms against the back of a chair. "Are you trying to undermine this night? I have not spoken a single disruptive sentence." His mouth opened, but no argument came. My mother approached nervously. "Ava, sweetheart, perhaps we should step aside. I'm finished discussing this," I said. The firmness in my voice drew attention again. A few guests turned their heads, listening without making it obvious. My father lowered his voice, but anger sharpened each word. "You created a serious problem for the family." "No," I said. I sat where I was placed. Preston joined them jaw tight. "Just cooperate. This is getting out of control. It was out of control when you moved my seat. That was not personal. It was entirely personal." My father exhaled sharply. "Sit here and behave, or you will make this worse. I am behaving." He stared at me for several seconds, unable to force a response. Finally, he stepped back. "We will discuss this later. There will be nothing to discuss." He flinched slightly, then walked away. My mother followed him, but Preston remained for a moment. "You do not have to be this cold," he said. "I am being direct." "Same thing." "No," I said. "Directness clarifies. Coldness manipulates." He did not answer. After a moment, he left too. The ballroom settled again, but the energy had changed. My interaction with my father had been quiet, but not quiet enough to hide his loss of control. Guests sensed the shift. The VIP table no longer carried the influence it had at the start of the evening. When dessert arrived, most people pretended to focus on it. Princess Amara remained calm at her seat, speaking quietly with her aide. She glanced at me once. There was no pity in her expression, only acknowledgement. The MC returned to close the program. "Thank you all for attending. We hope this evening has provided meaningful connection and insight." People applauded politely. As guests began to leave, several approached me with brief comments. "Your work is impressive." "I had no idea. You handled that well." I responded with short, factual replies. When the room thinned, Princess Amara approached me privately. "You were steady," she said. "I maintained alignment. That is rare. I am accustomed to disruption." She studied me for a moment. If you decide to work abroad temporarily, my office would welcome collaboration. I will consider it." She nodded once before leaving the room. When I stepped toward the exit, my phone buzzed with a message from Rami. "We observed. You remained composed. Well done." I typed back one word: confirmed. Then I walked out of the ballroom, leaving my family behind without hesitation. My father intercepted me near the exit before I could leave the ballroom. He stepped directly into my path, forcing me to pause. His jaw was set, and the look in his eyes told me he was not thinking clearly. My mother and Preston stood a few steps behind him, tense and watching the room to see who might be paying attention. "We are talking now," he said. His voice was low, but the edge in it was unmistakable. "No," I said. "I am leaving." "You are not," he snapped. "You humiliated this family in front of royalty and corporate leadership. You knew exactly what you were doing." "I did nothing except respond when I was called." "That is not how it looked," he said. "People are staring. The family reputation is at risk." "You did." He inhaled sharply. "This attitude is unacceptable. I am stating facts." My mother stepped forward. "Ava, please stop. People are still here. You cannot make a scene in front of these guests. They will talk. They already are." Preston looked around nervously. "Can we go somewhere private? This is not the place." "This is exactly the place," my father said. "She caused this here. She can fix it here." "Fix what I asked. Tell them you barely know the princess," he said. "Tell them this is all a misunderstanding. We need to restore credibility. That would be false." "That does not matter," he said. "What matters is restoring credibility. Marcus sent me a message 2 minutes ago. The firm wants clarification. They think you misrepresented yourself. I have never misrepresented anything." "You withheld information." His tone sharpened. "You hid your job. You hid your connections. You let us speak proudly about Preston while you stood there acting like a ghost in your own family." "I hid nothing," I said. "You did not ask." "That is not an excuse." "It is." The conversation drew attention from a nearby group of guests. They pretended to check their coats while watching us through the mirrored wall. My father noticed and lowered his voice slightly. "Come with me," he said. "We will talk this out." "No." His restraint cracked. "Then stop acting superior. None of this would have happened if you had simply told us who you were talking to all these years. You blindsided us. You dismissed me. We corrected you," he said. "We guided you. You diminished me." He laughed in disbelief. "You are unbelievable. We put everything into this family. We worked hard to give you opportunities. This is how you repay us." My mother's voice shook. "Ava, please. You are turning this into something it does not have to be." I looked directly at her. "You said the event was too sophisticated for me." "That was not the point," she whispered. "We needed the evening to go well. We could not take risks. I was a risk." "No," she said quickly. "You were unpredictable." Preston rubbed the back of his neck. "You could have warned us. I tried. You did not listen." He shrugged helplessly. "We thought you were overreacting. You always made your job sound complicated." "It is complicated. We thought you were exaggerating." "I was accurate." My father leaned closer. "If you have any respect for this family, you will come with me and explain to these people that the princess misspoke. She did not. You will do it anyway." "No." His voice rose. "You are refusing to protect your own family. I'm refusing to lie." My father laughed again, but this time it sounded strained. "You work in policy reviews, that is all. No one your age has real influence. These people think you do because the princess made some kind of mistake. I supervised the negotiations," I said. "I can produce verification. Do not you dare." His face reddened. "The last thing we need is proof that you outrank Preston's prospects or make us look ignorant. You made that choice without my help. You were supposed to support your brother's knight, not overshadow him, not embarrass him. Don't embarrass us." "I sat at my table," I said. "Everything else was your own creation." My mother reached for my arm. "Do not walk away from us tonight. If you leave now, people will think there is truth to what they are saying." "There is," she recoiled. "You are hurting us." A group of corporate guests approached the coat check. One of them recognized me and nodded politely. My father saw it. His expression darkened. "This is what you wanted," he said quietly. "To humiliate us in public. To punish us. No, I said. I wanted to be allowed in the room. You were in the room, he said. You just failed to behave properly once you were recognized. I behaved consistently. That is the problem. He pointed at me, his voice rising again. You are cold. You are distant. You act like your career places you above your own family. I act like my work matters. It does not matter here. It mattered to the princess. His jaw flexed. That does not impress me. I am not here to impress you. My father cursed under his breath. Then he did something he rarely did in public. He lost control. This is why we kept you out, he snapped. This is why we said the event was not for you. You complicate things. You do not understand how to function around important people. I held his gaze. I was on stage with a royal guest 30 minutes ago. That was luck, he said. Nothing more. Do not confuse that with status. Status does nothing for me. He shook his head slowly, disbelief settling in. You are determined to ruin this night. No, I said. This night was ruined long before I stood up. My mother looked around, panicked. A few guests had stopped pretending to look away. The exposed conflict drew silent attention from all corners of the room. Preston stepped closer. Stop pushing them. I am stating what happened. You do not have to be so direct. Yes, I said. I do. My father exhaled sharply. Leave. If you cannot support this family, then go. We will handle the questions. I did not intend to stay longer anyway. That is fine, he said. You have done enough damage. My mother flinched at his words, but she did not contradict him. I stepped back. Good night. My father did not respond. Preston looked frustrated. My mother looked small. As I walked toward the exit, the tall CEO from earlier paused again. That took strength, he said quietly. It took accuracy. He nodded slightly, as if he understood more than he said, then returned to his group. Outside the ballroom, the corridor was quieter. Music from the event faded as the doors closed behind me. No one followed. The humiliation my family tried to impose had turned onto them in full view of people they hoped to impress. I kept walking without looking back. I reached the end of the corridor before stopping. The quiet felt different from the ballroom noise behind me. I could still hear faint music through the walls, but none of it mattered anymore. I checked my phone briefly. 2 unread messages from Rami. One from my department chief. I ignored all of them. Footsteps approached from behind, quick and uneven. Someone was coming after me. It was the tall CEO, Daniel Morgan. He slowed as he reached me, keeping a respectful distance. Ms. Hale, he said. Before you leave, I would like a moment. What for? You should know something, he said. Your name is familiar to more people in that room than you realize. Your work has been cited in several internal reports across our international branches. That aligns with recent updates. He nodded. I never connected you to Preston's family. The contrast is notable. I am not responsible for their assumptions. Nor should you be, he said. I will not keep you, but I wanted to say this. You handled yourself professionally in a situation that would have broken most people. Consistency matters. He studied me for a moment, then extended his hand. If you ever need anything in terms of support or opportunity, reach out. I appreciate the acknowledgement. He nodded once, then returned to the ballroom. I continued toward the exit. I expected the night to end there. Instead, the doors to the small private lounge beside the coat check opened, and Princess Amara stepped out. She approached me without hesitation. Ms. Hale, she said, walk with me. I followed her into the lounge. The space was quiet, furnished with a long table and minimalist chairs. Soft lighting made it more subdued than the ballroom. She closed the door behind us. You remained composed under pressure, she said. Your courtesy earlier was noted. I maintained protocol. You maintained dignity, she corrected. That carries weight. She studied me for a moment. Your family did not know the scope of your position. No. And they relocated your seating without your consent. Yes. And then dismissed your credibility. They have done that for years. Princess Amara's expression sharpened. I have witnessed similar dynamics in diplomatic families. They tend to underestimate the quiet one. That is accurate. She sat at the table and motioned for me to join her. You understand the significance of the accord you worked on. I do. And you understand that your involvement cannot be publicly minimized. I will not minimize it. Good. She opened a folder that had been tucked under her arm. Inside was a formal letter printed on embossed paper. This was supposed to be delivered next month, she said. However, given your family's misunderstanding and the public nature of tonight's events, I am giving it to you now. She slid the letter across the table. I read only the header before stopping. Appointment consideration, International Cultural Advisory Council. Candidate recommendation. Ava Hale. I looked up. This is an advisory role reporting directly to our cultural ministry, she explained. It is not ceremonial. It is a working position. You would assist with cross-regional policy reviews, conflict assessments, and structural planning. You are well qualified. This is unexpected. It is earned, she said. You prevented a diplomatic error during your last assignment. I was present for the review. Your assessment exposed a misinterpretation that would have derailed the entire agreement. That is correct. We value accuracy, she said, and people who do not overreact. Tonight confirmed our impression of you. This role requires partnership with multiple governments. It does, she said, including yours. And it offers international reach far beyond your current remit. I closed the folder. When will this be finalized? When you accept. The council meets again in 6 weeks. Silence settled between us. Princess Amara lowered her voice. Your family's reaction tonight was unfortunate, but it does not change your trajectory. I am aware. There is one more thing, she said. Several executives approached me asking if your work was legitimate. I corrected them. That clarification shifted the room. My father requested I deny my work. I know, his voice carried. That was not my obligation. No, she said. Your obligation was to the truth. She stood. The royal office will contact your department in the morning. I trust you will review the details carefully. I will. She offered a small nod. You have my respect, Ms. Hale, and you have mine. She left the lounge without another word. The door shut softly behind her. I took a slow breath and stepped out into the hallway again. The ballroom doors had opened, and guests were finally leaving. My father stood near the coat check with my mother and Preston. They were in a tight circle, whispering intensely. I walked past them without stopping. My father reached out. Ava. Wait. I stopped, but I did not turn. He took a few steps closer. Is it true what she gave you? You saw the folder. I only saw the seal, he said. Preston said it looked official. It is. My mother touched his arm. Ask her nicely. He ignored her. How long have you been doing this kind of work? Over 6 years. Why did you not tell us? I did, I said. You dismissed it. He went silent. My mother spoke next. Ava, if that role is real, we want to understand. We want to know what it means. It means I have value outside this family. She flinched, but she did not deny it. Preston stepped forward. Are you really working with international councils? Yes. Like at the government level? Yes. Why did you never bring it up? I did. He ran a hand over his face. I thought you were exaggerating. That was your choice. My father exhaled shakily. We made mistakes. You made assumptions. He swallowed hard. Can we talk about this privately? No. Why not? Because the truth did not need privacy when you were diminishing me. His shoulders sagged. Ava, I did not know. You did not want to know. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. I continued toward the exit. My mother followed a few steps. Ava, please, do not leave like this. I am leaving because the event is over. She caught the edge of my sleeve. We did not mean to hurt you. You succeeded anyway. She let go. I stepped outside into the cold night air. The walkway lights cast long shadows across the pavement. My phone buzzed again. A message from my department chief. Call me in the morning. We need to discuss the recommendation you received. I slipped the phone into my coat pocket. My family still stood inside the lobby, watching me through the glass doors. Their expressions were a mixture of confusion, fear, and something close to recognition. They finally saw what they had ignored for years. But the reveal was not for them. It was for me. My father called at 8:30 the next morning. I watched the phone light up on my kitchen counter as I made coffee, but I did not answer. He called again 3 minutes later. Then my mother tried, then Preston. I let every call go to voicemail. By 9:15, the messages started shifting in tone. My father's first voicemail sounded controlled, measured. "Ava, we need to clarify what happened last night. Call me back." His second voicemail had more strain. "People are contacting me with questions. We should talk before this gets out of hand." His third voicemail dropped the formal tone altogether. "I deserve an explanation for the public confusion. You embarrassed us. Call me." My mother's voicemail came next. Her voice wavered. "Sweetheart, I know things were tense. We should talk when you have a moment. Your father is upset." Preston did not sleep. "Call me." Preston sent a text instead of a voicemail. "I did not know. I really did not. We need to figure this out." I set my phone face down on the counter and took a long drink of coffee. At 10, a message arrived from my department chief, Maya. "We spoke with Lithoria's council office. They are serious. I need you in my office at 2. I responded with a simple acknowledgement. Confirmed. For the rest of the morning, I cleaned my apartment methodically. Dishes, laundry, paperwork. I kept my hands busy while my mind stayed clear. The night's events replayed without emotion. Everything that happened could be traced to choices my family made long before the first guest arrived. At 12:30, my mother sent a different kind of message. "Ava, please come to the house this evening. We need to talk as a family. Your father insists. Do not make things worse by avoiding us." I read it twice. Then I typed a direct answer. "I will not be coming." I left it at that. At 2, I stood outside Maya's office at headquarters. She waved me in immediately. "Take a seat," she said. "You handled last night with discipline. I maintained protocol. You did more than that," she said. "You carried yourself in a way that reflected well on this department. The Royal Office made that clear during our call." She opened a file on her desk. "They want you to meet with their advisory committee next month. It is not a guarantee, but the recommendation is strong. I will be prepared." She studied me for a moment. "You understand the visibility that comes with this role. It will draw attention from your government, their government, and several corporate entities. That aligns with the position. Do you feel capable of managing that level of scrutiny?" "Yes." She nodded. "Good. Because you will not be able to hide in the background anymore. People will recognize your name. That is acceptable." Her expression softened slightly. "Your family situation does not affect your eligibility, but you should expect questions. Public perception matters." "I am aware. We will support you," she said. "You have earned this." I left her office with the folder tucked under my arm. When the elevator doors closed, I finally allowed myself one small breath of release. Not relief, just release. Everything was moving forward. I returned home at 4. My father's car was parked in the space directly across from my building's entrance. He stood beside it, hands in his pockets, looking up as I approached. He had never visited me unannounced before. I slowed but did not stop. "You should have called." "I did," he said. "You ignored me. That was intentional." He swallowed. "We need to talk." "No." He stepped into my path. "Ava, please." His voice cracked on the last word. It startled me more than anything else. I stepped back so he was no longer blocking me. "Say what you came to say." He looked down at the sidewalk before meeting my eyes again. "Last night got out of control." "It did. And I did not handle it well. You did not." He nodded slightly. "I received external information that corrected my view. The CEO, Daniel Morgan, called me. He said you have been listed as a contributor or advisor in multiple corporate reports. He said our behavior did not reflect the family's true position in international work. You understand because others told you." He exhaled slowly. "Yes. I understand the risk to my own firm's reputation now. I did not know who you were working with. The princess that counsels your department." I had no idea. "You dismissed everything I attempted to tell you. I thought you were exaggerating. I thought you wanted attention. I wanted accuracy." He winced. "I realize that. Too late, but I realize it." Silence stretched between us. He pulled in a breath. "I should not have moved your seat. I should not have spoken to you the way I did. You said more than that." "I know." He looked older than he had the night before. "I embarrassed myself," he said. Not you. That is correct. He nodded once. Your mother is upset. Preston is confused. They want to talk. That is not happening today. He looked at the ground again. I thought I knew who you were. You created a version of me that required no effort. His voice broke. I do not want that version anymore. I did not respond. He swallowed hard. If you give us a chance, we will adjust. I am not returning to the dynamic you prefer. I am not asking for that. I need clear boundaries. Name them, he said. You stop minimizing my work. Done. You stop comparing me to Preston. Done. You stop speaking about me as if you understand my career. He nodded. Done. And you stop contacting me unless I initiate. He hesitated at that one, but only briefly. If that is what you need. It is. He accepted it with a quiet nod. I know you may not believe me, he said, but I am proud of what you have done. Your approval is irrelevant. He flinched. I understand. I did this without you. I know, he whispered. I stepped around him and walked toward my building entrance. He did not follow. He did not call my name. He simply watched me leave, hands still in his pockets, shoulders slumped. For the first time in my life, he understood he did not control the terms anymore. I entered my building and let the door close behind me. His reflection vanished from the glass. The night before, everything shifted publicly. Today, it shifted privately. And for the first time in years, the imbalance in my family no longer belonged to me. It belonged to them. The next 72 hours moved quietly. My father stopped calling. My mother sent 2 messages asking if I needed anything. Preston sent a single text that only said, I am trying to understand. I did not reply to any of them. I needed clear separation before I made decisions about future steps. Silence helped. Work filled most of my time. There were documents to review, meeting briefs to prepare, and updated schedules to approve. My department chief asked me to revise a briefing for the advisory committee. Lithoria's cultural ministry forwarded additional materials. I completed each task with focus. Night after night, I closed my laptop only when I finished everything on that day's list. On Friday afternoon, I stepped outside headquarters and found my mother waiting beside the security checkpoint. She wore a heavy coat and held her purse tightly, like she expected to be turned away. Security personnel watched her from their desk, unsure if she was allowed inside. She saw me and straightened. Ava, I am not here to cause problems. I just want to talk. You should have called ahead. I tried, she said. You did not answer. That was intentional. She breathed out slowly. I know. And I am not asking you to change that. I only want a few minutes. Then I will leave. The cold air stung my face. I glanced toward the sidewalk. She followed my gaze. We can walk, she said. I will keep it brief. I nodded once. We stepped away from the building. She kept a few inches of distance between us, as if approaching too closely would push me to leave. I have been thinking, she said, a lot. About dinner, about everything that led to it. I want to tell you the truth, then say it plainly. She clasped her hands. We preferred the version of you that did not challenge anything. It made family events easier. It kept your father calm. We underestimated you because it was convenient. Underestimation was not the only issue. She swallowed. We preferred the version of you that did not challenge anything. It made family events easier. It kept your father calm. It kept the focus where he wanted it. On Preston. Yes, she said. We favored him. We justified it by saying he needed more support. The truth is, we supported him because he followed the path your father understood. He followed the path my father created for him. That is accurate, she said, and we let it control everything. We reached a crosswalk. She stopped, though there were no cars. When you left the ballroom, she continued, I realized something. You never raised your voice. You never made accusations. You never tried to embarrass us. You only defended yourself when pushed. I stayed silent. She continued, Several guests told us afterward that your restraint showed more professionalism than anything we displayed all night. That aligns with the feedback I received. She nodded. I believe that. Cars passed slowly on the opposite side of the street. She watched them before turning back to me. You said we created a version of you that required no effort. You were right. It was easier to ignore the parts of you that made us uncomfortable. Your independence, your distance, your career. We did not want to adapt or learn. You did not want to learn. That too. She hesitated. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she said. I am asking for a chance to learn who you actually are. Not the version we assumed. The real person. The one who stood on a stage next to a princess without hesitation. That version has existed for years. And we missed it, she said. I regret that. A delivery truck turned onto the street, forcing us closer to the curb. She stepped slightly behind me, without thinking. Old habits. She corrected herself and moved back to the side. You will not get immediate access again, I said. That is not possible. I know. You will not get updates about my work unless I choose to share them. I accept that. You will not ask me to downplay anything. I will not. She tightened her grip on her purse. Will there ever be a time when we can sit in the same room without tension? When there is evidence of change? I can try. Trying is not enough, I said. Consistency matters. She looked down. Then I will be consistent. We reached the end of the block. She stopped. This is where I will go back, she said. I promised I would not keep you long. I waited. She took one careful breath. Ava, I am proud of you. I did not say it when I should have. I am saying it now. I did not respond. Her eyes searched my face, hoping for something, but she did not push. Thank you for listening, she said, even if it changes nothing. She stepped back, giving me space. Then she turned and walked toward the parking lot without looking over her shoulder. I watched her go, trying to decide if her words meant anything beyond apology. They might. They might not. I needed time to see patterns, not promises. Later that evening, I sat on my apartment balcony with my laptop open. The advisory council folder lay beside my chair. The offer was substantial. It would change my responsibilities, my schedule, and my long-term direction. I reread the documents line by line, confirming I understood each detail. A message arrived from Maya. Take the weekend to decide. No pressure. I typed a short reply. Understood. Another message appeared immediately. For what it is worth, you would excel in that role. I closed the laptop, letting the screen fade to black. My phone buzzed. A text from Preston. I talked with Mom. I talked with Dad. I know we caused a lot of damage. I am not asking for a reset. I am asking for a starting point. Tell me what that would look like someday. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed one sentence. We will see. I placed the phone face down. The city lights blurred in the distance. I replayed the week's events in order not to analyze them, but to acknowledge what they revealed. My family wanted control. They lost it. I wanted distance. I gained it. They wanted recognition. They received consequences. I wanted accuracy. I kept it. I had no certainty about long-term reconciliation. I only knew I would not return to the structure that minimized me. If they changed, if they learned, if they accepted boundaries, then progress was possible. If not, I would continue forward without them. The clarity felt straightforward, not dramatic. I turned off the balcony light and went inside. I had one chapter left to close before the night ended. I spent the next week focusing on work. The advisory council sent additional materials for review, and my department chief scheduled 2 preparatory meetings. My schedule filled quickly, which helped me maintain distance from the personal issues waiting outside the office. My family kept their silence. No texts, no calls, no unexpected visits. The quiet made boundaries easier to manage. On Thursday evening, I reviewed the final set of documents for the council role. Everything was clear. The commitments were reasonable. The travel requirements matched what I already handled. The responsibilities aligned with the work I had been doing for years. The offer reflected trust, not speculation. I sent a direct message to the council office. I accepted the appointment. Their reply arrived 6 minutes later. We will coordinate transition procedures and travel scheduling. Congratulations. I closed the laptop and let the decision settle. It was straightforward. No hesitation, no regret. I made the choice because the role aligned with the direction I wanted, not because of anything involving my family. The next morning, my department chief asked me into her office. You confirmed your acceptance, she said. Yes. Good. They are moving quickly. Training sessions begin in 3 weeks. That timeline works. She nodded. "There is one more thing. A statement will go out next week announcing your appointment. It will be public. That is expected. You understand it will reach people who did not pay attention before." "I do. Are you prepared for their reactions?" "Yes." She seemed satisfied with that answer. "Then everything is in order. Keep me updated as needed." I returned to my desk and continued working without distraction. On Saturday morning, I drove to a small cafe downtown. I had plans to meet an old colleague who relocated to another department last year. We met occasionally to exchange updates and compare assignments. When we finished, I returned to my car feeling steady. My phone buzzed as I started the engine. A new message appeared from my mother. "We heard about the appointment. Congratulations. If you are open to it, your father and I would like to see you sometime soon. No pressure." The message was short. No attempts to justify anything. No emotional appeals. No expectations. The shift was clear. No urgent calls. No demands. Just recognition of my terms. 2 days later, a letter arrived at my apartment. My family almost never communicated by mail. I recognized my father's handwriting immediately. The envelope was plain, no unnecessary details. I considered leaving it unopened, but curiosity outweighed hesitation. Inside was a single-page note. "Ava, I will not make excuses. Your work matters. Your judgment matters. I am learning to adjust to both. I will respect your boundaries. When you choose to talk, I will listen without correcting you. That is all I can offer for now. Dad." The letter was simple. The tone was controlled. There were no attempts to reverse blame. There were no requests for immediate reconciliation. It met the boundaries I set. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. I did not feel relieved. I did not feel anger. I only felt clarity. He understood the terms. That was enough. The public announcement of my appointment was released on the second Tuesday of the month. The statement was brief. My name appeared alongside 3 others joining the advisory council. My department circulated it internally. The embassy reposted it. Lithoria's cultural ministry shared the notice with a list of press outlets. I received messages from colleagues, former supervisors, and several ambassadors. The responses remained professional. My family did not reach out. That silence felt intentional, not dismissive. They were leaving space for me to make the next move if I ever decided to. A week later, I stood on the balcony again reviewing notes for the training sessions. The air was cool. The city was quiet. I checked my phone before going inside. There was one unread text from Preston. It lacked the insecurity of his earlier messages. It acknowledged that the information would be shared only on my terms. I typed a short reply. "Not today. Maybe another time." I left it at that. I thought about the gala, the seating chart, the public dismissal, and the moment my name echoed through the ballroom. The contrast was no longer sharp, it was settled. Their treatment of me did not determine my work or my value. Their choices reflected them, not me. The distance between us was not dramatic, it was deliberate. I went inside and placed the training notes on the table. My phone buzzed once, a message from my mother. "Whenever you are ready to talk, we will be here. Take your time." I realized my control over the timeline was the ultimate resolution. The balance had been restored. The story of my exclusion was over. If you have ever been treated like your presence did not matter, or like your accomplishments were somehow inconvenient, you understand the weight of that silence. You understand how long it takes to separate your identity from someone else's expectations. And if you have ever proven people wrong simply by continuing forward, you know the clarity that follows. Tell me your story. I want to hear it.